Hi everyone, welcome back into the classroom. Well, we're going to continue learning how to do the Paint It Simply, working with the limited palette and painting acrylic. Okay, so I have out my 6 colors, the Hansa Yellow, Naphthol Red Light, Phthalo Blue, Red, Violet, White, and Black. And these are the colors of the Paint It Simply. Now in the Paint It Simply program, I have over 500 lessons with this to show you how, with these colors, to show you how to color mix and how to do all kinds of stuff. And then we have all kinds of mediums that we can have, from the newer Matisse open medium, which really slows down the drying time, to the medium that I use a lot, which is the extender medium that we have. And I usually put it out in a little cap like this. Now, what I'm attempting to do here, what I did with like the vase of flowers, some of those other things, we're going to paint pure acrylic. Okay, so in my old thing, when I started out, we didn't have these mediums. When I switched from oils to acrylics, it was just acrylic. And so it was really an adjustment period to try to figure out how to do things with that drying time, because it just dried so fast. And that's the biggest problem most people write me about. How do we correct this drying time? Okay. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to run you through a whole bunch of lessons, painting a bunch of different things, acrylic, and show you the acrylic side of it. And practice the acrylic side of it, learning that. Then when we start to add the mediums, you go, wow, these mediums really do slow down the paint, okay? And it works a lot better that way. That's how I learned. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to paint, this is a horizontal board. You can make it any size you want. We're just going to go paint some clouds. So I stepped outside yesterday, and where I walked the dogs, this little prairie section that I walk my dogs, my labs, and I took some pictures of the clouds. This is what a normal day here in Nebraska looks like. The clouds are absolutely magnificent. We're going to simplify those, and I'm going to show you how to paint just simple acrylic clouds and how you can get wispy clouds and everything with the acrylics, okay? All right, so this is just a regular board. I gave it one coat of the canvas prep medium, and then I sanded it with 120 or 180 grit sandpaper. And I like it because it gives just a slight matte to the painting. Now, I'm going to be using some some Fusion brushes, and I'll start out with my old one. We're going to use just water. I have a container of water right there, and the acrylic. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is set up, and I'm going to use the paints. You can use them thin. Well, think about it this way. Watercolors use them really thin. The acrylics, you can use the Heritage for watercolor. I did in watercolor books and lots of videos with it. But I'm going to set up the colors, and I'm going to use the colors a little bit thicker depending on the area that I'm going to paint. And we'll get into that. But what I want to do is I'm going to put in a little bit of a ground line here. I'm going to put in the horizon and then the actual atmosphere up here, show you how I do it, and practice, and then you can go do it with yours and practice. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to establish the horizon line. I'm going to take a 1-inch brush here, and I like a dirty yellow. I'm going to take some Hansa Yellow, a little bit of the Naphthol Red Light, and some black, and see how that makes just a nice raw sienna kind of color depending upon how much yellow I add. Let's come up here. This is my thing that you've seen me use so many times. It's I just made this little square from a Home Depot bit here. So I'm going to take this and try to have it. Let's just put a little bit of a ground line here. Most of this will be about the clouds. So I'm just going to draw a line right across there. And that might be a bit high, but because I want this to be about the clouds. So we might even just drop that down a bit. But I'm going to just take some of this, and I don't want it to be absolutely perfect. So I'm just going to pull some of this ground down here. And I'm just going to kind of scrub this in so I get a bit of movement here. Okay, and it's thin. I'm using water, and it's thin. And this soaks into the matte surface here pretty quickly. Okay, but see, here's the thing is, I can take my edge of my paper towel, and I can wipe it right along that edge and make it just almost disappear back there. So I like to paint with the paper towel, and especially in this kind of stuff when I'm doing this really, really quick. So that's just an idea. Now, when you go look at it, and I have the photo here, and then I put it always up in my big monitor back there, the sky is really dark up here. As a matter of fact, you can go get these value scales that I use, and I show you these. If you go over to the JansenArtStudio.com, and then you click on the supplies, there's all kinds of color mixes. There's all kinds of stuff on the Paint It Simply program. And I mean, all kinds of free downloads there for you, but you can go and get these and print these out. And what I do, this one's gotten nice and dirty sitting next to my palette, but what I do is I cover them with tape, just regular packing tape, and then I can take a little bit of my hand sanitizer every once in a while. This is that hand sanitizer I show you, and you just put it on your paper towel, and you can just rub it over this and clean up. It'll clean it up every once in a while if it gets too dirty. So I just print it off on your regular printer, and then you can cover it with a little bit of, and I hit that yellow there, but you cover it with some packing tape, and then you can clean it up from time to time as you need to, you know, to make it look a little bit better. But I'm going to go up there, and you can see the top of those darks of those clouds there is right about a value 4, right? So there's my value 4 in that sky. You can see that, just a 4. And down here at the bottom, we're a good 9. See, right along that horizon line is a good 9. And that's what happens. That's the atmospheric. And so it goes dark. The sky goes darker as it goes up to the top and lighter as it goes out and across the horizon. So that's one of the first things that we want to set up. And so I'm just going to take some water here. And into the sky, I like these colors in here as well, especially if they're around the horizon line. So I'm going to take just a tiniest bit of the phthalo. You can see immediately, just a tiniest bit drops that down. And maybe just a touch of the red violet, just a hint of it, because I like it slightly violet. And I want this up around a 9. And you can see I'm right at a 9. So that'll be good. And I'm just going to push this right along the edge. Now you can just flip your T-square over, your square over, and use the other side of it as well. I'm going to pull some of this just lightly down into the base. That helps give me a little bit of atmosphere here. And I'll walk this up a bit here. And if you need moisture, grab moisture. But you know what I want to do is I want to deposit a lot of paint too. I don't want this super thin. And remember what I always tell you about acrylics. The thicker the paint, the slower the drying time. So if you're putting this on and it just goes like really dry, like this is real thin and it's dry already, okay? And if that happens to you and that bothers you, then use more paint. But see, I don't mind it. This is, even though this is dry, let me show you. I can still use the acrylic part of it, which the Heritage does, and I can take a paper towel here and I can run through and see I can lighten up and remove a spot off of it. So, and there's the paint, and you can do that for at least an hour, if not a couple hours. Now, let's get a little darker. Let's get up here towards our 4, okay? And we'll put in a little bit of violet, blue, white here. We'll make this paint kind of thin, kind of thick, a little bit of water, but we're looking for our 4. So if we go to a 5, and it will dry down to a 4, because acrylics dry a little bit darker. So this is a good color, not quite as violet as the photo. I could have a little more violet in it. And I'll start to pull this down. Now, see what with oils and stuff, you pull it down and you would start to mix them together, right? You would start to mix these all together. And you can do that, and you can use water and do that. But with acrylics, what I do is I make, right here, I'm just going to lighten this up. Let's put a little more violet in it. And I'm going to come right between with the value. So if I was a 4 and I was a 9, maybe I make a 6. So this is kind of like a 7, so this will be okay. And then I'll come in here with that 7 right in here, right? And I'll lay that down. The key here is use lots of paint. Lay down some paint. Now see, this is what I like, is I step back on my brush and I start just whispering the color up into that other 4 that was there. This is what creates this atmosphere, which is what I like, okay? And so it's just a real light pressure. That's what the fusion brushes are designed to do. Let's go a little bit lighter, okay? A little bit lighter, and let's go right down through here. Now, some of you will find this hard to do because you're like, oh, it's going to dry too fast. I'm going to show you in just a second, okay? So I'll come a little bit lighter right in here, right? Boom, and I'll put that out. So basically what I have here, right along these edges and all this kind of stuff right now, is a value scale. But see this movement that is in here? This is what I like. And I don't mind, and it's like here, it's starting to dry up. Still a little wet, but it's starting to dry up. Now, this is where the fun part comes in, because you know, we can put extender on here and that won't do any good. You can put all that stuff in there. Won't do any good. But what acrylics are, what's the foundation of your acrylic? Is water, right? So I'm going to take my larger brush, like I showed you last time, and it's just going to be a little damp with water. And I'm just going to pull through like this. See, the water is its solvent, and it is going to start to soften everything here. And I can pull up, and I want to leave some of this atmosphere. But see, I use the water to soften that out, okay? The water is your solvent. Does that make sense? So the water, I can use that to burn it up. Now, what really makes that to kind of blend, I don't want to blend it. I like this movement. I could go back and forth several times, and I could blend that, but I don't like it blended. I like atmosphere through there. Now, what is important about this? 2 things that are really important. One is you use enough paint, because water's a solvent. You don't want to pull through all the way to your background. So you got to put on enough paint. And 2, you have to put on those intermediate values. So I don't want to try to do this with a 9 and a 4. That would be too hard. I need to get a 7 in there and maybe a 5 or a 6. I need to get a couple of these values in between. Then they work together really easy, and it gives you this beautiful sky. So it looks like I've got this oil blended sky with all this atmosphere and everything in here, and I have it, okay? The key is lots of paint. Put that down, get those values, those what we would consider halftones, halfway between where we are and where, like the rose I showed you, put in halftones, right? And then use your solvent to soften it. And if it starts to dry too much, you can push with your finger or something like I'm going to show you in just a few minutes, okay? So that's how you do that. So we set that up like that. Now, let's come back. Let's take some of this light ground. We'll just toss a little bit of that in. Let's take some yellows, some reds here, a little touch of black here, which makes all the fun colors that I'm going to have there in the back of my painting that you see, like little trees and stuff like that back here along these edges. And I'm just going to drag this on. This is really, when I paint landscapes and stuff, this is really where I love to use my knife. And I like my knife to come through, and I make these edges, little things like this. Could be trees, we could put back here, I could take this, let's add a little water and a little bit of this blue. This is what the atmosphere is. And we could put a little idea of a hill or something back here. Something in the, instead of being the prairie where I am, we could put some hills back there. And we can soften their edges. This is where I like that paper towel. Soften their edges. Pinch wipe the extra color off of my brush and just pull through here. And you remember what we talk about with everything. It's the direction of your brush. I can set up little ideas of, shadows and stuff. Put one hill back behind another here by making it slightly darker and a little bit more of a edge, right? So, but it is the water and it's the transparency. And when you're using your brush and stuff, what it is more than anything else is the angles that you use that help it make it look like little hills and stuff there, see? And so, you know, with these clouds, I'm going to bring the light in this way. So if I was doing perfect little hills, I'm going to bring the light in here because the light is hitting right here. And that's where it was when I took this photo. I would highlight, so this I would consider a highlight, and shadow to the left. So I can make some shadow marks here. So I have light and shadow, and I can just push a little bit to soften that out. And see how I can just push my finger and push back through, and I can create a light side and a shadow side to that little hill. Maybe this one becomes more of a little shadow there behind it. So, and I can do that with anything. I can come back here, pick up just a little more paint and pull this shadow this way. So I can make these receding hills back here, right back here like this. Just ideas of them. I can very thinly, if I pulled off too much, just add a little thin little bit of that back in there. But you can see you can make hills, see? And they recede, and why they're receding is what I'm doing is allowing this to come through. Now, on my other channel, I paint more advanced paintings like, whoops, go this way. That guy back there, everything's reversed in the camera, but that guy back there. So I painted those hills and those clouds and all that stuff with him. And at the end, video 3, which I uploaded just the other day, at the end of it, I show you the atmospheric part of it. Atmospheric part of it is where acrylic artists can take water and the atmosphere, which is like a light blue here, right? And if I want to push this back a little bit more, I can just go over it with that light blue, and it'll push certain parts of that painting back. So if I wanted to create other little hills or push one part back or something like that, I can push and I can tap a little bit and add a little more interest to some of these areas, a little bit more movement interest to some of those areas. And that's what you can do with the atmosphere. So you take the sky back over and you push it. So that's towards the end of that painting, and I think it was like an hour long. So if you go over there to watch that, go all the way through towards the end of the painting, about 10 minutes or so before the end, and I'll show you how to do in a big painting like that. I'll show you, how to do that atmosphere and stuff like that on that. But it works really, really nice. And I did it acrylic on that. So now let's take a little bit more of our black. Red and black make the brown. Remember? Red and black in this make the brown. And then we can yellow that up with some of this. And let's add a little atmosphere here. Let's add a little bit more, maybe too red on that. But let's just yellow this up, and let's just slide a little more color through here. And I'm not going to do too much here. This is basically going to go in pretty quickly to support what I'm doing in the sky. I want this to be about the sky, but I do want a little bit of interest here into my foreground. But you could put layers of trees. We could put other layers and grasses and little things up in here and stuff if we wanted to do. But, this is going to be a practice. This is a practice. This is, you can turn this into a full painting if you want. But I want you to practice working acrylic skies more than anything else. That's what I want you to practice is acrylic skies. But like I said, I like to use my knife to create. I like the knife because it creates more natural movements with stuff. So I can create some highs and lows, some other little interest areas there, coming through like other little hills and shadows of hills and little things. And then get a little heavier and stuff up here, a little bit more stuff going on up here. And you can do grasses, fun little things like I've showed you, grasses and everything like that, using like in hawk. I'll show you the grass brush. You can go in there and put grasses on and stuff. I mean, we can do all that. But I just want this really soft right now. And this is already starting to dry. This is dry here. So this sets the stage here for my sky. Now, my sky up here can go a little bit deeper. I want this to be about those clouds. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper here. So we'll push this on a little bit more blue, a little bit more violet here, okay? And let's just go a little bit deeper. That's a little too deep here, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to push this on, right? And it's a little bit too much. And so to soften the edge, I just add a little bit of white to it. Don't ever worry about anything. Just soften it, add a little bit of white to it, and work it down. Now that you already have blue in here, you can quickly, and you know, you're an acrylic artist, so you work quick. You don't have to work super fast, but you know, I use big brushes, so it goes real fast. Now, right down here, if I want to soften this edge, how do I soften that edge? What do? You don't need extenders or anything like that. What you need is your solvent. So I put a little bit of water into my brush here, and I just run the water right up over the edge here. And I'm going to streak this down a little bit because I wanted to pull the dark down. And then I could use my bigger brush if I wanted it super soft, but I want to pull some of this atmosphere down right in here. If it goes down too far, you can just take a damp paper towel and take some of that off, move some of that around. So I've deepened that up a little closer to what it is up there. I could even get a little bit more, but I think this will be fine. For our demonstration, for our practice, that'll be fine. I got a mark in there. Oh no. I mean, a couple ways to solve it. I could take water and take that off. I could, and what I always like to do is get a value in your brush that's very close and just start coming through it. Boom. Now, see, I had too much water right there. Do you see that? And I went right through my blue quite a bit. That's why that blue is so soft on there. So I just put another little light blue back into there. And I'll come back into it here. Come back into it. It is very important when you're doing these kinds of techniques and you're using your solvent. It is very important that you use a very soft brush and a light pressure. If you go out there and grab just a cheap little synthetic brush that you got at your local craft store, you're going to pull a hole right into your painting because they're not designed to do this. These are fusion brushes. They're very, very soft, and they're designed to do this. You put just a little bit of water in it, just damp, and they're super soft so they can go over and just do a real light softening of it. The other thing to do is let your acrylics dry up a little bit more. You can do that as well. Okay, but the big thing is get paint onto the surface. Get some paint onto the surface. That is where the main part of the painting is going to be. Now, let's come back. Let's take some white and some of our blues right with my palette knife here. And let's just push some clouds, some ideas of the clouds, and see how thick this is. And see, I'm just skipping it over the surface. And I have a little bit of the dirty color from my ground, which works. And I'll just take this and I'll skip and slide this over the surface. Now, I'm going to make some background clouds back there. Now, and this is what I like, just do, okay? And I can soften that. Now, I can take my big brush, or I can take this brush, my big, huge, soft brush with a little bit of water, pull down into it from here down. See how it softens that edge. Wipe your brush because you picked up white. Pull down into it and see how it puts it and it softens it right into the back edge back there. Pull down. Don't pull up because you can, but pull down. Leave the edge. Leave just little edges to where some of that, and now you've got this little line of clouds back there. Do you see that? I can come back in. As I build the clouds, my paint gets thicker. So now I tap in a little bit heavier paint. And I can build little edges here of heavier clouds right in there. So a little bit more cloud. See, I put that right on there. Let's build a little bit more cloud here. and I can push in and blur out like that. I'm going to take this side out because I got it really kind of on the wrong side. I want the light coming in over my right shoulder here. So I'm going to push a little. Ooh, that's kind of neat. It's got a little pointed edge there, just a bit, but a little thicker paint, see? And see, that's where you get these highs and lows. See that? Okay? Real soft. And I can just slide along the edge to make ones that look like they're further back. And I can just run my finger a little bit and see how that pushes them way back. Let's push one right back there. And a little bit of that dirty of that edge of that ground came up into that. So that's some background. Now, let's come back up here. How are you going to build these clouds? It's all, building clouds is just like painting that vase, guys, that we did in the last lesson, okay? It's light and it's dark, and then it's all kinds of halftones of different colors in between. And so what I want to do here is I want to come into this cloud, and I want to pick a color, a grayish color here that's going to be about the value of what I have here. That's what's going to be my key. So I want that right around a 7 or so gray. So I'm going to take some, and we'll just do it simply black and white right now. Maybe a little yellow, a little bit of blue here. And we're going to make, and I don't like to mix real well. Take all these colors, and we'll add this in, and we want right around a 7. So that's going to be pretty good. That'll probably dry to a 7. And let's just come in here, and we're going to push this right in here. And see, it's kind of thick paint. Sorry about the sirens, probably picking those up. And so we'll come in like this, and this thicker paint that's right here. We'll just push some of that around. Boom, that's right there. Now, some of this gray, I can touch back into this one back in here and just slightly push into it there. See? Just create a little bit. Just take a bit of this. And see, this color here is still wet because I put on a lot of paint. Does that make sense? Because I used it on with my palette knife, and I put on a lot of paint in that. So it's got a lot of paint there with it. Let's take some of this gray. Let's make a bigger one right up here. Okay. Right up here. Let's just push some of this on. Push some of this gray on right in there. Okay. Now, so we have a darker color here, a little bit darker. So we'll take that gray. Let's add a little bit of red to it. I love the red. Reds and blues, the violets go into that. A little darker, but I don't want this too cool because of my landscape there. So I'm going to add a little yellow as well. The red and the yellow, that brownish color to it. Let's add some of that right along in here. See, I'm just palette knifing that in here. And I don't care if this starts to dry up because I have my solvent. Because I'm going to be a solvent painter today. So I'm going to add the bottom of these clouds right up in here. I want to add right where you see up through here. See, light is hitting here. This is through the width, the body of the cloud. This is actually the shadow where light can't get down to it. It's the shadow. So turn this on the side, and you have that vase that we painted the other day. The light side to the shadow side. And you can have reflected lights in there and stuff like that. Okay, so, I mean, there's all kinds of fun things you can do. Right now, what I like to do, I'll show you this, but I really like to just push this around with my fingers. But you don't have to do that. You could use a damp brush here and just work this in, the damp brush, because we're so soon after applying acrylic, the damp brush softens it in. Wipe your brush every once in a while. You'll see me constantly wiping my brush. I'm going to build this up at this angle here. And I'm just going to pull this across. Now, I can, if I get too much paint within it, I'll rinse out my brush with just the water. And you see the water, I can just soften that bottom edge. I can blur that bottom edge if I want that cloud to be a little bit more wispy right there. Okay? the paint can still dry up, because I have a solvent. Does that make sense? And the solvent will work on this for a good hour to 2 hours, depending on how hot it is, and depending upon how much paint you use here. So see, my gray I put up here is still wet. It's still wet. But the solvent will work it. And if it works too quickly, then let it tack up a bit more. See, this is pretty quick. This softens it pretty quick. Now, I want to preserve some of that shadow, and I picked up a lot of that medium gray. So I'll just wipe it out of my brush here so I don't lose too much of my shadow that I have here. And right in here, I want this to wispy out a little bit, so I'll take some water and maybe just scrub the edges of it here to give a little bit more wispy edge to that cloud right in there. See? I like that. I like that look here. Now, right up in here. So we set up a middle. We set up a shadow. Now let's go set up some light. Let's just take some of our light right down here, maybe a little yellow, a little red into it. I like the light here. A little bit of the blue. This is just a real nice gray, a little bit red, so maybe a bit more yellow into it, okay? And then a little bit more white. I want not quite pure white, but almost. Let's take some of that. So we're going to take some of this, pick it up on our palette knife here. Let's find where some of this light is. And let's just plow on some of the light. Now, you don't have to use the palette knife. You could use your brush, okay? The brush, you can come in here. Let's just take a brush, and I can push this in. Now, the one thing that's most important, guys, no matter what it is you do, you can see I got a big old drop of paint there. No matter what it is you do here is that you use enough paint because you want that paint to be around for a while. Does that make sense? So use enough paint. So I use the palette knife there. Now, what do? We can soften, take a little bit of water. We can just pull down. Now, let me show you a couple ways. I can work that edge, see, and I got lots of time. I can sit here and talk to you for a while. I got lots and lots of time because water is my solvent. Now, like I said to you before, some acrylics don't do this. They're not designed to do this. This acrylic Heritage is designed to do this. I designed this paint. I was the chemist behind this paint. I designed it to do this, okay? So I can take this brush. Remember, I want to pull down. So I'm just going to lightly pull down. Boom, look at how that softens that cloud. And now I've got white in my brush, so I make sure I have a damp paper towel here. I wipe that off. I'm going to start right up here, lightly, just barely touch the surface and just pull down. I picked up white, see? I picked up some of that white texture there. And I'm just going to start a little bit of fly there and just pull down. Now, I can whisper back and forth to whisper this up into the sky back up there. See how I can take some of that dirty stuff that's in there and create higher clouds and all that kind of stuff. I can take this brush, the smaller brush, and this is really loose, so I have to have a real light pressure here. But I can just work this edge. So what I do is I take out some of the opacity of the paint and I start working these together. They're blending together a little bit, but more than anything else, what I look at these as little layers, and I'm watching the transparency of the paint. Does that make sense? I'm watching the transparency of it here. So I can, if I want something to move faster, I grab more water. Sometimes I like a little bit of that blue. And see, this blue's a little dry here. So I just add a little water to it, reconstitute it. I like to put that sky blue back into that cloud. Slightly different value of it, but that sky blue comes back into that cloud here, and it harmonizes it. What do we always talk about? The harmony of our paintings, right? So see, that blue is coming into my cloud here, and it's just making it part of the painting here, okay? And you can, if you look at here, you can see the violets and the blues that are in there, right? Let's just add some of that right up here. Leave a little bit of that dark right in there. Let's take some of this sky blue right up here. I haven't added the light into that yet, but you can see how that sky blue just kind of softens it out. Let's take a bit of my lighter color here, and let's just work this more as an edge. Let's say we want to have a more definite edge to this cloud right up here. Boom. We'll leave a little bit of a hole there. Then I just small little X's working down here. And what do I do here? I can see how I can push and soften with my finger just like I did on that vase. That's how I love to paint the clouds and stuff. Because I'll push and I'll bring up some of that blue that was there underneath. Do you see it coming up? Because I'm pushing with my finger, and I'm pushing down with my finger. I'm scrubbing, almost pushing hard down through some of the layers there to build that cloud. Let's put a little more light here. And we'll create a little bit more of a wispy edge. See, if I pull in, I create that translucent edge to the cloud here. And sometimes I like that little translucent edge, or I'll pull it out a bit like it's a little wind blown there, picking up a bit of the blue through here. Put on a little bit of paint, work that through. You could also work it through with a soft brush. The big thing is, see, and this is still, because look at, I put on so much paint. This is still wet in here. And so if I wanted to, while that's wet, I could come back in here and add some more, precise light colors here. I could build this up. Let's go more white, almost pure white now. Push that right up there into it. Pull down here. But see, I like when this starts to tack up, because then I can just streak over it a little bit and put light clouds in front of the dark clouds like that. And I'll get a better layer to those clouds. And this is what I like to do. I like to just layer and tap little bits through here. And it's just like painting on that hawk. I showed you, how to keep it wet, but then I showed you what I really like to do is the layers. And I like, because see, I get all of this. And I can control this now, a little bit more white. Let's push a little bit more white edge right in there. Building little edge, maybe a little edge right here. It's soft. And this shadows go out that way. Right in there. So, and I create all these little edges and stuff like that. I can create a more powerful light. I can create a little bit more powerful light yet right in here and pull that down through the front of the cloud here, right in there like that. And if I need to soften anything, let's say, so this is still wet here, but let's just say I put this on and you go, oh, it's not softening there. What do? You don't freak out and go buy more extender and everything because you need extender. No, you go to your soft brush, you go to your water, okay, as you solvent. Now, what did I also show you in some of the stuff you can do? Is you get one of these. This is a real fine little mister bottle. And you just mist it lightly. Let it set for just a second. You're painting with Heritage. This is what Heritage is designed to do. Let it set for just a second, and then just pull down and look. See? And if it starts to dry up on you, you mist it again. I'll build that edge up just a bit. Let's push that edge. Now, let me show you this, okay? I am going to, because I can see it happens there. So I'm going to mist that whole thing and just let it sit for just a second. And I'm going to push a translucent edge like I see right here. And I'm just going to clean up my finger a bit. Okay, let's just, matter of fact, let's clean it up just a bit. Clean up my hands just a bit here. Okay. And then I'll push right in there. Push, wiggle it. I can come out just a bit, and now I've created that translucent edge up there on that cloud, just like what you see up there, see? Now, I'll probably build a lighter one up in front of it, but You know, I love that. Now you can do that with your brush as well. But see, I'll grab that and let's just grab this and let's just push that in there. And some of you go, what'd you just do? Something amazing. It's fun. This is what I want you to practice. I want you to learn the acrylics, learn to use this, learn to use your water, you learn to use this. And then when we go to add extenders and everything that's going to make everything slow down and work longer, you can use that combination of extender and water and make it go even further. Back in the 1980s, and I'm letting that just dry up a minute while I'm talking to you. Back in the 1980s, when we first developed these new types of acrylics, and I worked on the formulas of those, you know, years and years and years ago, we added the water and the extender, a glycol-based extender, and they would pull holes in each other. But now today they don't, because we've got them intermixing together really well. So here I'll just mist lightly, and it's good. You need a light mist like this. It's a real light mist. You need a real fine mist, okay? And let's just push here now. And see, and see how I'm bringing up the blue that's in it? And let's push this up a little higher. I'm even using my left hand here. Let's just push this edge. That's a little dry right there. It already dried, talked too long. So I just missed it slightly. Let it set just a second. Let it soak into that. And see, I'll push that edge. It's picking up right through the blue. I can drag some down like this is wind stroke, like maybe this has a little bit of a little rain in it or something. I can pull the edge down, give it that misty look to it. I can come back up over here, mist that for a second. Let's just push that right in there, soften those out. That shadow just disappears back there. Or I can, whoops, don't want to lose that cap. Mist that real heavy there. And maybe this is pulling down. See? Boom. You get this downward look, like there's some rain or something right there in it. Miss that just a minute. Let it sit for a second and pull down and work into it. Boom. Now you can't do this all day, and if it dries up too much for you and you can't do it, then you just put on some more color. So see, now I've got this little mist that's going through here. Let's build this bigger one back up here. Put a little more white. Let's leave that transparent edge. Let's put some of this white up. Now everything is really, really wet. And when it's really wet still now, see, this is wet. This is wet right in here because I added so much water into it. It's wet. It's like painting with an oil now. And so this is where I like to feel it with my finger. But it gets harder when it gets super wet because everything blends too much, too quickly. I don't like that. So I usually let it dry a bit because I learned, I was an oil painter for many years, and then I switched to acrylics, and I fought acrylics for several years, fighting them, trying to get them to paint like an oil. And then it hit me. Quit painting acrylics like oils. Start painting acrylics like acrylics. And then you can do more. So I start to let them dry up a bit and start using the drying properties of the paint, which makes it a little easier. So if I really want to build this cloud, I got to let it dry up just a bit so that when the paint goes on there, it sticks. Does that make sense? Now the paint, see, it's still a little wet right there. I'm going to go to pure white right here and just really hit a nice highlight right here. Maybe pull this. You can see I'm picking up a little bit where it's really wet, but pull a nice highlight across that. Now look at the misty little bit. Maybe I want to add a little misty light right up there. That's all dry. That whole area there is dry. And so how do you do it? I don't need to go grab extenders or anything like that. I'll just give it a second. I'll mist this. Let it reactivate the blue that I have there. If it's been too long, say it's been a couple hours, your blue won't reactivate, just put more blue on. That's all you got to do. And it doesn't have to be the same exact blue. It can be a little different. Does that make sense? So I'll let it mist there for just a second, and now I'll pull through. Let me just pull some of this down right here like that so you get the idea of the movement. Let's blur this one up a bit, maybe a bit down, coming through and pull down just a bit. Just create a little extra movement right through there like that, see? And it blurs all out, and it works so well. So we're 45 minutes into this painting. If anything doesn't work, or it dries up too much, or say that you live out in the middle of the desert and it dries real fast on you, you have a couple of things. Just every few minutes, if you want to keep it working, just keep this mister bottle with it. In some of my other classes, some of the other videos I showed you, that it had a little bottle, and it was a little tiny humidifier, and I put it in one of my other videos. I loved it. It works great. Keeps everything wet. But you know, there's all kinds of ways. But the thing that I like is even here. See, I'll just mist this and then just tap this in. And see, I like this because it's kind of dry. It's kind of dry there, so the white sticks. See how it sticks? And then I get this real nice modeling of the color there. And then if I want to move it some more, I can just mist that lightly. Or, like I showed you, take your big, huge brush. Take your big, huge brush. There's lots of different looks. Plan your looks. Take your big, huge brush with some water like this and start up here and pull down. Look at that. Boom. Look at that. And it just gives this motion to it. Just pull down. And you get this beautiful cloud. And it looks like you painted it for hours, right? But what you got to remember is what you're learning how to do, what I'm doing with these acrylic lessons, is I'm teaching you how to control your solvent. You're what we call a solvent painter. What is a watercolorist? They're a solvent painter. And a gouache painter is a solvent painter. They paint with that water like that, see? And that's what you're learning to do. Before we go add extenders and doing all that other stuff, you know, to increase our drying time, see? You cannot tell me that does not look like oils. And I haven't painted it with any of the oils. Let's put a little more light, maybe a little bit of it right out here. And we'll let that just diminish right out there. Just a pulling bit. Now, I like, because this is all wet, I like to push the edge. Pull down just a bit. Push the edge here. Pull back and create the kind of undulation, highs and lows of the color. That's what I like to do and see into the painting. This is still wet. You see, it's so wet right there. Why is it so wet? Because I layered water and paint and water and paint. The stuff's on there pretty thick, and it's staying wet a lot longer. The problem with a lot of acrylic artists, and I was one like this for a long time, guys, is that I would just put water in my paints and paint them too thin. And what's the fastest drying thing? Water. And so and then I would use my colors too thin. Now see, you have all this. And I'm just lightly, you can tell I'm barely holding my brush. And you can see this blends really easy because there's so much paint on there. And that's what I don't like. That's what I have to fight sometimes. I get too much paint on there. And that's why I love the acrylic. I just let it dry for a few minutes. I like this. This is a little softer. See how it's, and I can get that dragging there. And then I can just push lightly with my finger and set it. I'm feeling the surface. If my finger slides really easy like it does in there, I don't like that because the color is uncontrolled. I like the color, and you can feel it. I like the color to stick, immediately stick. And then if I feel that the surface is too dry, I missed it. Does that make sense? Okay. And so I like that color to kind of stick. But anyway, you could come up here and do all this kind of stuff. You can come up and do more stuff. I could come right back here and say, ooh, I want to put in a little bit, maybe not pure white, some of this gray. And see, some of this edges of this gray is a little bit dry, but let's just build a little bit of it right there, okay? A little bit of that light right there. And so I will rinse out my brush. a little bit of water, and I can just pull the edge like this, pull it down, and you'll see I'll move that edge. I'll move that edge right there. Or, like I like to do, I push it. I'm going to push that up just a bit. Pull down just a bit. Feel the surface. If you start to pull holes because your water's not on there evenly or something like that, then, you know, just give a little bit more of a mist. Point your mister the right way, Dave. A little bit more of a mist. I'm going to let it sit for a second, and I'm going to whisper out the top edge of this right here. Just by touching that and whispering that out, see? Boom. And if it doesn't whisper, if you figure like you're across the surface, you don't have enough water on it. Does that make sense? And so you're learning how to control your water and your solvent. You don't. It's a fine balance there. But if you practice this, and clouds like this are great things to practice with, you know, with painting clouds. Let's put a little lighter one right up here, right in there. Boom, happy little cloud. Maybe a little bit of gray. So this is dry over here, so I'll just add some water to it. Reconstitute it here. Let's add a little bit of gray to it. A little bit over here, a little darker, a little more black. Right in there, just a touch. And maybe I'll just push those together right there. There we go. A little bit right in there. Fun, happy little cloud. And a little more light up onto this side, maybe. Push that up a bit. Run that through. Little edges. Just pull across a bit. That's a fun little cloud. So you can set one right up in front of the others. You can blur off those edges. See, I can pull this way and just get that wispy, translucent edge. Pull along the bottom there. Lots of different ways in which you can do those clouds. Does that make sense? Okay? So, and it's going to take practice though. You know, yes, it is easy for me because I've done 16,000 clouds, okay? It's practice. That's all it is. It's practice. And it's learning how much water to use. It's learning how much, you know, when do you mist? Do you use a brush? What do you do with all this? And I want you to be able to get some of this stuff down, so then when we add extenders to it, you're going to start saying, wow, I don't need it to be that wet, that long. You really don't. Because you can create tremendous things. Now, what's the difference? The difference is the Heritage. When we did the Heritage here, we made it water permeable, okay? So with the acrylics that you had that we first started developing in the early 60s and stuff, when we started painting with some of those, they were made very hard. It's like the one video I showed you how to blend with acrylics. And I put a little sealer into it, and you can't blend with it. It makes this paint instantly hard. You can put water on it, and it just repels it. It just goes away. And a large percentage of the acrylics out in the market are like that. They put on, they instantly dry, and then they repel water, so they can't do this. When we developed this paint back in 2008, we made it water permeable for a couple of hours. After 24 hours, no, it's gone. But you can change that. You can change that working time with more mediums and more everything else. So there's a lot of things that you can do to control it. And so what you look at as an artist, there's two parts of processes that happen to an acrylic. One is called the dry, the other is called the cure, okay? And these paints don't cure for 28 hours, about 28 hours depending on how much heat and, the most important, humidity within the room, okay? So that's the cure. That means, what does it mean when they're cured? Water won't affect them anymore. Water it's done. To move that acrylic, you have to go to alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, at least 70% to move that acrylic. Because alcohol is the binder breaker we have for this paint. But cure means water won't do it. Dry means the surface is dry. But the surface is dry, but it can still be affected if you missed it and stuff and wait. It can still be affected by water. Water can still take it up, see? And you can pull a hole in it and take it up. And it can do that. But after 24, 28 hours or so, it won't do that anymore. It's on there permanent. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, how long is that? That's all going to depend on where you live, how much time you have. And later on, after you practice this, I'm going to show you how you, even if you're in a dry area, how you can extend that. But how do we extend that and still use the acrylic solvent properties to paint beautiful things? And we can. I'm just going to add a little white. I looked at this and go, hey, this is kind of a neat little painting. I'm going to add a little light cloud right here, maybe a little translucent edge right there. Drag this. See, I love this. See how the paint sticks? And I can drag a bit and I get this. See this undulation? See that little undulation in there? That's when it's really pretty to me. I'll put up a little bit more light edge right there, maybe a little bit reaching right there, okay? Now, I want to soften that. I can use a damp brush. I can use the big brush pulled down, or I can just mist this whole thing right there for a few seconds. Let it sit for a few seconds. Okay, and then just work that edge. Pull that back down in, pull that back down in. Maybe it's feeling a little dry right there because it just soaked it up. Let's put a little bit more so I can push right up here at the top and create the translucent edge. Right up there at the top. That's where I want that translucent edge. Right there. See the difference? See, I got that little, see how it's picking up the blue? Because the blue's reconstituting there. And I can pull that right through like that and create that little translucent edge. There goes more sirens. But anyway, that's how you do it. And every once in a while, don't forget to clean your fingers. And they're like right outside. But don't forget to clean your fingers and stuff. And, you know, and remember you could use that. Look at that. It just looks like clouds just blowing through, little rain bit, mist and stuff coming up underneath there. That's pretty neat. Now you could go fix up the front of this. You could go watch how I do that hawk. This side. Go watch how I do that hawk there, how I just do a simple little grasses and stuff on it. That hawk is a 3-part video up on the other one. It's got some great techniques for the clouds, coming back afterwards and setting in some atmosphere and stuff like that. And it is overall, it just works so very, very well. But see, you can see those clouds and you say, wow, those are really advanced clouds. This is how you paint clouds, you know. And this is one of your greatest tools to create that movement and stuff through the clouds. But what I want you to be doing is learning how to use these simple paints like this and learning how much, learning how much water goes into that to get that movement. And realize that not all acrylics can do this, okay? Don't write to me and say, my acrylics can't do that. I know. Some acrylics can't do this because they're not designed to do this. Does that make sense? They are designed to dry fast and hard and permanent right away. I've designed paints like that, okay? And what we did is we added a sealer medium, this multi-surface sealer medium that I showed you. If I wanted my paints, if I wanted to take this and dry hard and fast like I showed you in the blending video, if I wanted it to dry hard and fast and not do that, I just add a couple drops of this to my paint, put it on, and the paint instantly dries hard and water doesn't affect it. Even after about 5-6 minutes, water doesn't affect it, okay? So we made a paint that you can change. Does that make sense? You're the artist, you can change it. So it's kind of fun sometimes in some of the techniques I want to show you, where we'll block in a beautiful thing, give it a coat of sealer, lock it in, and then do some of this stuff up on top of it, which is a lot of fun too. Then you never pull holes. Everything works. It's a lot of fun techniques to do it. But acrylics can do fun things, okay? So that's how you paint clouds. That's how, I mean, one way. This is one of 1,000 ways to paint these clouds. But hopefully you enjoyed it. And don't forget to go over to the other channel and look at those, okay? Look at those videos. I want to do more beginning stuff, understanding the working properties of your paint here. And on the other channel, we're going to go more, and we're going to step up a little bit more and more and more advanced into more advanced work and doing some realistic work. Not realistic, but more casual work and stuff. But a lot of fun, okay? Don't forget to subscribe. Click that little bell so you know when these videos come on. I have another one coming day after tomorrow. We're going to do this type of technique on some roses. And because I know a lot of you want to paint roses. So I'm going to show you how to do it even more on a set of the roses and stuff. Clouds, roses, all that stuff. They're all objects that you're learning and painting to learn how to use the solvent, okay? To use it within your painting and create some really interesting effects, okay? All right, guys. Thank you very much. Oh, and go subscribe to the other one, too. If you're new to this channel, go over to the other channel, and I'll put the links for all this in the video description. Go over there as well, okay? Thanks very much. I'll see you guys in the next video, and you can do this. It takes practice, though, okay? It takes practice. But don't say you can't, because you can. It just takes practice to learn how much, okay? All right. I'll see you guys in the next one.